Yo, what's up, Internet? Welcome back to another episode of Three Averagely Intelligent Dudes. And today, as always, we're discussing dangerous ideas. The dangerous idea we have today is, obviously, as I talk about
Obviously.
No.
This is going to be funny in like 5 minutes,
Yeah.
but obviously we're talking about mushrooms.
Yes. We're talking about psychedelics today and some of the benefits, some of the uses, our personal experiences with them, how they've been used in history, and just everything they do.
Some of
with
the revelations I had.
Yeah, because this conversation was spurred by a massive mushroom trip that me and John took on Tuesday. So enjoy the conversation. So on Tuesday, obviously we did
Obviously.
not obvious to you guys,
For the people watching on the internet, it's so obvious that what we did last Tuesday.
You guys know what we did last Tuesday. We don't have to talk about it.
Okay.
You know what's funny? I just noticed that it will be obvious because it's in the title.
Damn. Multi-layered
I
jokes.
was just thinking, like, it will all be obvious because it'll say psychedelic.
We ate mushrooms.
Yeah, damn, that's so funny. So I was right all along.
I fucking told you.
See? It all makes sense.
It makes sense.
Just when I think you couldn't possibly be any dumber, you go and do something like this. And totally redeem yourself!
I was like, I always wanted to have one of these, like, really deep psychedelic trips. Like one of these, like, you see the other side type psychedelic trips. I never experienced anything like that. Any other time I've done mushrooms was more recreational for just fun and just hey, party, I'm out at concerts and stuff like that. And so I always wanted to have one of those experiences, but this time I was not like, let's have that experience. I thought I was going to do it recreationally, like that's what I was attempting to do, but
Sometimes you miss up the ratio.
I don't know.
It's hard to say.
So it turns out the dosage that we partook in got us to the fourth dimension.
It totally took me.
Yeah.
I'm glad I got to experience that with you.
Yeah.
In like a kind of like a, I was able to kind of grab a hold of you and you were able to grab a hold of me. I felt grounded.
Yeah. Oh, no.
Because,
Like you weren't gonna float away.
Yeah,
For
because
real.
there was times when I was floating away,
Yep.
and I felt very grounded by his presence.
Yep.
Because there, I got to several periods in the deepest recesses of this mushroom trip where I was like, is this what being crazy feels like? And I thought about this in the shower because it's been about 48 hours since that trip, and I've thought about it a lot, not in a negative sense, but just in an analyzation of like myself. One of the things I realized was like, as I'm going on this trip and as I'm starting to like make realizations, I come out of it, right? The next day I'm clear-headed, but I feel like I've taken something with me. I feel like I have now like gained something from eating this poo-poo flower that grows out of the fucking manure that has unlocked a certain part of my brain that has given me a knowledge that I can't ignore. It's unignorable.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I feel like I really came. It's not just coming through something and coming out the other side. It's like
Kind of like a bowel movement. It's like a crossing a threshold.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I felt like I crossed a threshold. I could look back and be like, I remember the old me back there, back before I knew that.
It's
Yeah.
It's funny that they call it a trip though, because it is like that. You do go on a journey, like you said, and like most trips, they change you in some way. It's like I said, it's a journey, and that trip it was like like I started at a place. I was a certain person when I started that, and through that journey, I changed. And like I ended up somewhere different, even on the other side as it wore away.
Yeah.
It was like, unfortunately, Mac wasn't there with us. Mac,
I was
what were
not
you doing
there.
this week?
I was out in the desert. I was at a place called Gold Butte National Monument in Nevada, next to Lake Mead, sort of. And I was doing like a volunteer trip it was like marketed towards college students. It was like an alternative spring break where you volunteer and do like habitat rehabilitation and stuff like that. So
Good experience.
that's what I was doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a great experience. Yeah, it was really fun. I didn't do any shrooms while I was out
Right.
there.
You have before though, correct?
I have done shrooms. I think I only did shrooms like twice.
We've done them
two or
together.
3 times. Yeah.
Mhm.
But yeah, I've only ever done psychedelics recreationally. But I did do DMT once, and then that was like my experience on the other side. But I didn't really like DMT's different. Like I wouldn't even consider it like in the way that you just defined like a trip as being like a journey, like I don't consider like a DMT as like a trip. It's like a teleportation device, you know? It's like you're just like taking yourself from sober to like the peak of a trip, and then you're just like out of it again, and it's over in like 30 minutes or so.
Yeah, I do remember hearing
You're
that.
like, and there's no, you know, I don't feel it as much with mushrooms, but definitely if I take like acid, I'll feel really like kind of worn down the next day, like just a lot of energy used up or whatever. But
I felt that at the end of the night, but the next day it was more mental.
Yeah. I feel it more physically with acid than I do with mushrooms. But definitely like with DMT, like feasibly speaking, like if you had like an hour-long lunch and you could eat in 10 minutes, you could eat and then do a DMT trip and still have like 10 extra minutes to recover and like drink some water before you go back to work.
Back to
work. And like you could be, from my personal experience of doing it the one time, you could go back and you'd be fine and nobody would know anything about it. You could just trip in your car and have a good time.
I felt like I had a lot of secrets that I gained, you know, that kind of like were like, you know, sorry, I want to bring this up because I wanted to ask you about this in retrospect to Tuesday. You and I both talked about this feeling like when we're really fucked up on mushrooms in the fourth dimension. It's almost like you're going crazy. Would you say that like it was like intrusive thoughts and intrusive like speech patterns? Because I couldn't quite turn off what I was doing. Where in the normal world, when I have intrusive thoughts or I have intrusive speech patterns or something that I feel like I can't control. When I'm sober, I can much more grasp control of that, and I can talk myself down. Right. But when I was tripping really hard on mushrooms, what I felt like was I had no control over the intrusive thoughts and speech patterns that I normally can control. I felt like my barrier was just non-existent. So I would just talk. And where you would think like, oh, yeah, what were you cracking jokes? Was it like, what were you doing? Were you just talk? No, what I was doing was I couldn't stop thinking about how everything is everything. Everything's touching through the air. If everything is everything and I'm part of you, can I see your memories if I try hard enough? I heard something outside and shut a door, and I was like, I can still hear it. Why can I still hear it? I can still hear it. Yeah. And then it like all these things I couldn't stop myself from thinking. I couldn't stop myself from saying out loud. I felt like I was an oracle that was plugged in and given super juice. And I was like, and at one point I remember you said we can ask Jessica, and I was like, Jessica doesn't know because we're Jessica. And like just things like that, like I got so amped on these thought patterns and I couldn't stop them. So I wanted to know, like, not even that I wanted to know. I just wanted to like hear your experience on the idea of the inability to turn it down. Yeah. That intrusiveness of your thoughts and speech patterns.
Yeah. I don't think I had that experience actually, because I was having, one thing I kept coming up to me was like, I kept thinking like I was the one that measured out our dosage, right? So I had used the scale and everything, and I was like, I'm going to give us each 3 grams. So we're going to do 3 grams each.
We had the great mushroom draft.
Yeah. Okay, let me rewind. I'm going to answer your question when we get to that, but I want to get to the how this all came about. So I was like, all right, we got to get in like an ounce of mushrooms. So I got like a fuck ton because I'm going to do some microdosing throughout time. And that was my goal. But I also was like, might as well trip. Yeah. You know. So I'm like, I Google it. You know, I'm like, all right, what's like a good size trip? You know, because any other time I've ever done mushrooms, it was kind of just like, here, you take a couple of these, I'll take a couple, and we just eat them. You know, we just kind of eyeballed it. But I wanted to like be a little more measured. Now, I don't know if my scale was out of whack or it's just these are just really strong mushrooms. I just don't really know, because we ended up splitting 3 grams, but we're going to go to John's house, and I did not want to like travel with like separate entities of mushrooms, because if you guys don't know, a little legal advice here, like that is intent to distribute, right? So if you have an eighth of weed, no big deal. You have 2
multiple individually wrapped eighths of weed. It looks bad.
It doesn't look like personal use anymore.
It doesn't look like personal use anymore. So
it's weird.
I was like, I'm gonna mash these together. When we get back, we'll just split them up. And so it's funny. We pour them all out in the thing, and then we're looking at them, and we're like trying to divvy it up. And I was like, yo, like there's big pieces, small pieces, you know, caps, stems,
different players on the team.
So we decide, all right, we're going to lay them all out from size, like from big to small, and we're going to draft our mushrooms. So we each like, I'll take this big piece.
I
all right, I'll
missed
take
this
this
part.
big piece. I'll take this little piece. It was so funny.
It was great.
so
I was like,
funny.
I'll take this one that kind of looks like a weird little egg.
Yeah. And I was like, ah, damn, man.
I wanted the little
you
egg
leave
one.
me with this nasty fucker here, you know. Type thing. So we do this draft, and we have like what we think are two, you know,
Equal piles ish.
and we start eating, you know, and we're munching, bro. I remember we were munching like mouthfuls of mushrooms. I was like,
Skippy peanut butter on a spoon, and I just slapped it against all my different mushrooms and ate it like a lollipop.
I'm doing Reese's, you know, so I'm pounding a Reese's. But after a while, I'm like, I've never eaten this many mushrooms before. Like, I know, like, I've never had to chew mushrooms in this quantity. So I was like, I'm going to leave this big chunk behind. Like, and I was like, yeah, I'll leave a big chunk behind too. So we really only probably take maybe 2.75,
between the two of us.
Yeah, each of us, right? So anyways, and yeah, that shit took me to the loony bin because it is a trip. It's a journey, right? It's not like DMT. So like we started off, we're playing Pokemon, you know, we're like waiting for them to hit and we're playing Pokemon. And I remember throughout the course, they started hitting quick for me. And throughout the course of the game, I'm like, I think these mushrooms are starting to like forget what I'm doing, you know, and like
start hitting me in the belly. Yeah.
He's like starting to do stuff. I'm like, is it my turn? Is it your turn? Like, where are we right now? Like, what's going on? I remember everything getting more and more fuzzy to the point where I finally was like, I can't play this game.
We abandoned the game.
Yeah,
we abandoned the game.
Okay, so this is all fun though. I'm like, yeah, mushroom trip. And for all the viewers who don't know about trips, like it comes in waves. You know, it's like you get strong and then it backs off a little bit and it gets stronger. Dude, it starts going and like we get deeper, it gets stronger and stronger. After a while, I'm like, I've never been this far. Like, I've never been this far on this journey, you know? And I'm
It's like wave 18, so new personal record.
Bro, and seriously, and now I'm starting to get a little worried because I'm like, well, how deep are we about to go?
Like how much further
do I have to go?
Because you have to come back out.
Right.
So you're going really deep.
Right.
But you know, at some point, you got to crawl your ass back out of that really deep hole.
And you just don't know, like, where the end is. So with every wave, I'm like, am I in the middle? Like, am I halfway down to the bottom, or is this the bottom? You know, and then it hits you again, and it's more deep. And I'm like, oh, my God. So after a while, I start kind of panicking. And I'm like, oh, fuck. I OD'd on mushrooms. Like, I ate way too many mushrooms, and I'm fucked completely, you know? And so
I heard this could happen.
Yeah. So a lot of my conversation was trying to talk myself down from the idea that I OD'd on mushrooms. But it was all internal because I didn't want to freak you out, right? So I just kept, like, being like, all right, you're fine, man. Like, you can't OD on mushrooms. Like, you can't die. I kept telling myself that. I'm like, you can't die. Dude, you just cannot die on mushrooms. I don't even know if that's true. Is that true or not?
I don't know.
I don't know. I've
gotta
never
Google
heard
that.
of anybody dying.
If you can. I never actually did, but
The answer is yes. A magic mushroom overdose isn't usually fatal.
Okay, so
But
medically
overdose-
speaking,
Yeah.
like
Right.
medically speaking, yes, because an overdose is just like more dosage of a drug than your body can handle.
Coma, psychosis. This makes sense.
yeah.
So like, yeah, you could have gone deeper.
Yeah. You know,
Like you could.
I agree.
Like you can get to the point where you could break your mind. I'm sure.
yeah, right. I did think that too.
kinda
Well,
where I
like
was getting
sometimes,
at.
like if you jump, like
Yeah.
I was listening to the Joe Rogan Sad Guru podcast, and he was talking about this. He's telling the story about when they were kids, they used to like dive into this well, and then they would like climb out of the well and jump in it, and like you had to be careful. Like he was like, yeah, you couldn't dive in like sideways. You had to go straight down because otherwise you get all fucked up and everything. And you know, I feel like that's kind of the same way. Like you can dive at a certain depth, but if you go too far, you're like too far down for your mind's capability to crawl back out of the hole that you've put it in. And so I think that, you know, you can do some actual damage. Because also, like, psilocybin is a chemical. Like, we don't know. Like, you could probably have too much psilocybin just, like, roaming around in your brain, and it might just fuck some shit up.
Put you in, like, a state of psychosis.
Right, yeah.
Thing where you're saying. And so I was doing that.
Fry all
Like,
your receptors.
I was really just going through it. Like, I remember I kept having to, like, remind myself to breathe, you know? I
Like,
was
breathe?
Just like, just like you can pull oxygen into your body, dude, you know? Like, I was choking on water and stuff. Like, so I was like, finally, when we went to go lay down in the bed, that was, like, the worst part of it for me. And that's why I went to go lay down in the bed, because I was like, all right, I kept telling myself, all right, you're having this experience in your mind, but you have to kind of separate it too, of like what's happening outside of your mushroom trip. And so I was like, okay, I'm in here So that's kind of like you were saying, like, too, with, like, I did have that ability to control my mind and what was happening. I'd be like, all right, inside here is a Looney Tune land. But if somebody, this was Tuesday afternoon, I kept telling myself this. If somebody were to walk in here right now and look at you, you're just taking an afternoon nap. You know, like, if I just go to sleep here on this bed, like, in my brain, I'm freaking the fuck out. But, like, if somebody opened it, I'm just sleep, you know, taking a nap. Like, you'd be totally fine, bro. You'll totally be fine. And so I kept just having to keep those two things separate in my head of, like, what I was experiencing mentally and what was the reality of the situation away from mushrooms and all that stuff. So that was my only intrusive thought, was just you're not dying. Like, it just kept coming in. I was like, damn, what if I fucked up, though? Like, what if I just took too much, you know? And, like, what's going to happen to me if I did? And I was like, well, you're in it now, buddy, so you gotta just ride, you know? Like, if you wake up in the hospital, you know, so be it, you know? Whatever.
Yeah, I would describe what happened to me as being possessed by the mushroom spirit. Because I could not turn off the things I was saying or thinking, and I felt the need to proclaim them.
I remember that
constantly.
I remember you doing that.
And it's. I was gonna say it's unlike me. Well, really, you're not like that 24/7. You're not just the guy that's on mushrooms all the time. But I look at it now, looking back, even at those intrusive thoughts and some of the things I was saying, as like a positive. Like, I feel really good, positive energy from that trip. I feel like I learn things about myself, but I also feel a different way of looking at some certain things. You know, just like I don't feel like I would have ever thought of the thought that when you're sleeping, you can still hear everything. I don't know if I would have thought of that sober, but in the throes of my mushroom trip, I was like, wait, when I'm asleep, I still have ears. Like, I'm still receiving the sonic information. Even if I'm not currently analyzing it with my awakened state. Who's to say I don't remember everything I've ever heard when I'm asleep?
So do you think that maybe you have those intrusive thoughts all the time, but it's just like your perception to them was opened through the mushrooms?
Possibly.
Because, like, that truth has always existed, but you had not perceived that because your state
That's
of
kind of what I
perception
was thinking. Like, I always feel like when I take psychedelics, it makes me more aware of all of the stuff that you're always experiencing, but you don't notice. Like, your brain evolved to ignore a majority of the information around you because it's totally irrelevant to whatever it is that you're doing at the time, most of the time. So, like, you know, like, there's that old saying, like, you can technically always see your nose, but your brain just kind of blocks it out because it's like, oh, I always see the nose, and it never made any difference to, like, my depth perception or anything like that. So your brain can just ignore that information.
That was my reasoning behind hearing everything.
Yeah, and I think that that's what happens when you take psychedelics, is that it just makes you, it, like, tunes you into all of those experiences, and it heightens all of your senses to a point where you're just like, whoa, like, and that's also happening mentally too. So, like, even little thoughts that, or maybe subconscious thoughts that you wouldn't actually have consciously in your newly developed part of your brains, it, like, opens up the doorway between those two parts, and that would also explain, like, the less filtering, because I think a lot of those filters might just be, like, things that society has probably told you, like, oh, you know, like, John, don't talk too much, or you know, because I definitely have that. Like, they tell me that I'm talking loudly all the time in public, which I know that I do, I just don't care. So, like, for me, it's like a different thing, but I know that there's different things that people have told me about my own personality that sometimes I'm thinking about, and when I'm on psychedelics, I don't think about those things. At all.
I was on psychedelics, and I just kept saying out loud to the guy, because, you know, Wavy was there in, like, the background, but, like, I kept saying stuff like, whoa, like, I say things everybody already knows. I felt the cool air blow on me, and like, I started to say the words, that cool air feels good on my legs. I didn't even get through the sentence, but I was like, that cool air, everybody knows. Everybody knows, John. Everybody knows that the cool air feels good.
Not on your legs.
Yeah, but you see what I'm saying? Like, I just felt like everything I was saying was not grammatically, that's not the right word. Like, the way that I was communicating was just strange to me. I felt like a foreign animal.
You were saying things that had absolutely no, like, not only did they have no context within, like, the situation to be said, but, and this is something that I've experienced with tons of people. Like, if Wavy was here, I feel like he'd say this about every time he's been sober around people that trip. but it's just like people who are tripping think that there's really interesting things going on that aren't interesting to somebody who's not tripping. And so
Agreed.
like you're saying, like you're like, oh, like the cool air feels, oh, but everybody knows. I think that's not even necessarily about that everybody knows. It's just like, what exactly do you plan on communicating with that
What's the
information?
point?
Yeah, like what
What's
exactly are you saying to these other people? Like it's mostly just like you saying out loud you like the way that the cool air feels on your legs.
I tried to figure out what was my reason for that proclamation, and I couldn't figure it out.
Yeah, like why am I telling these people why my legs feel nice and cool and breezy right now?
I had some great silly moments while I was tripping on mushrooms. One of my favorite silly bits I came up with while I was tripping was like, why don't people just always have their hands up here, right? And it's like you see people who spend their whole life trying to work out their muscles and be strong and be healthy. Get your hands up in the air. It's gonna work you out. It'll work you out. Do this for 4 minutes.
Yeah.
you're gonna feel the burn.
And we also got to talking about the studies
very
that
true.
say that actually releases like endorphins in your brain and stuff too. Like they've done studies that show like standing in a Y pose is like really good for like boosting your mental like
Power posture.
Yeah, like power.
Put your
posture,
hands
yeah.
up.
Yeah, like
Everybody put your
I'm
hands up.
so convinced that that's a placebo effect. I'm so
the
convinced.
hands above the head.
Well, have you like looked at any of like the initial research of like how that kind of research got started? You know what I mean? Like they were not the best experiments. So like you introduce these people to an idea that there's these things called power poses, and then you tell them in their experiment to take these different poses, and then you ask them how they felt afterwards. And so they're kind of primed to feel
they've
powerful.
done a blind study though, where they're just like stand like this. How do you feel?
Now they've done them blind, but the idea that the poses are powerful was already part of like the zeitgeist now. So like the placebo has been spread amongst the society now to the point where it's creating the effect, but we can never go back to when it was tested as if it was actually testing the effect or if it was causing the effect.
Yeah. I think it's mind-body link. You know,
Fight the gravity. That's what I say.
But why those poses though? That's the thing.
Well, no, I don't think it's those poses inherently. I just think that I think it is those poses inherently, but it's the same thing. Like certain language, this is vibrations to me. It's like certain language will make you feel certain types of way. Same thing with like body. Like if you lay down for a long period of time, you're more likely to take a nap than you are standing, right? Because your body is in the nap vibration, you know?
I have heard that, you know, like evolutionarily, like making yourself big. Like this is what you do, like if you get encountered by like a bear or something, like you make yourself big, you make yourself loud, like you don't cower from predators, you make them seem like they're the prey. So you make yourself big, you make yourself loud. And so like I feel like I've always thought like, okay, that I can buy, like the idea of like getting yourself big, you know, standing up tall.
Because it's true. Like, look at somebody who's like anxious or depressed or sad. Like, they're like,
yeah, they curl up.
Yeah, gravity mushes you into, you know.
I just thought that was an interesting.
Because you're not fighting against it.
You know, like I thought like there's lots of poses, you know, like if you get into like a thinker pose, I know people like I feel like I'm thinking, you'll see me like when I'm thinking, I'll touch my chin and I'll be like thinking, and I don't know if it's like, do I touch my chin because I know that that's like a thinking pose and subconsciously, or did that come afterwards? You know what I mean?
You bring me to a great
like a chicken
point.
or an
great
egg
point
thing.
about our trip.
You bring me to a great point about the trip.
Really?
Because you're saying like, do I do this because it makes me think better? Or am I doing this because I think it's supposed to make me think better because this is like the thinker pose, right? It's like the placebo effect kind of. Or like, you know, what presupposition did I come in with that might have affected this? So at the height of, I guess, your trip, when we were like we kind of hit the bed and I was like looking up at the ceiling. And there was nothing on the ceiling. It was just a blank ceiling. But I had enough mushroom juice going through my brain to where every time I blink, all the mushrooms would come into my vision and give me amazing fractal geometric bioorganic patterns. And they were constant throughout the majority of my trip. Even when I was on my kitchen floor looking at my black refrigerator with a light hitting it, I could see nothing but these shapes and patterns, just thousands of them, moving, some stationary, some twisting. And these patterns, all of them, were very Mesopotamian, Central American, Mayan, Aztec kind of shapes, patterns, figures.
Pyramids,
I mean, like I could literally see like a bird stone at Machu Picchu, and it's surrounded by layers of triangle-shaped buildings and steps and patterns that are all moving and twisting. And so I thought to myself when we were on that bed, and I was like, wait. Did the Aztecs see this stuff and then build that stuff? Or am I seeing this stuff because the Aztecs built that stuff?
Yeah.
Like, am I seeing these patterns because that's what I think I'm supposed to see? Or is this just a naturally occurring shape pattern and
that's
whatever?
what it is.
And something I didn't talk about then, but it just hit me now. What if your DNA has something to do with that? I mean, I don't know if it does or not, but I know I have chunks of my DNA that come from that area for sure. You know, my father was born in Paraguay. I have a lot of family down there in the South America. You know, there's lots of native peoples there. They had very similar buildings and shapes and things like that. Like they all did across that area. They shared similar cultural traits. So was I seeing Aztec patterns, or were the Aztecs seeing the same patterns as me?
Yeah, yeah. Which is such a, like you said, it was huge
Chicken or
for
the
me.
egg.
Chicken or the egg, right? And it, in the context of a greater conversation that me and Mac have had plenty of times too, we always ask about, is there a such thing as an objective reality, or is it all subjective? You know, like, yes, we all understand that the way we're experiencing this room is based on our own perception of it, but aside from all three of our perceptions of it, does the room have its own if we look at a color and we're like, this is this shade of green, this is this shade of green, but does the green itself have an actual color green? You know, and so it's weird to me too. Like, I don't know, as we were having that part, which blew me away, by the way, just fucking blew me away, because I was already kind of having this trip of like, everything gets connected as one. I think when you were talking about that too, in the sense he was like, I'm saying things that everybody already knows. No, we don't. But you just were having such an experience of oneness, which I would have too, that even like you said, Jessica already knows what I'm thinking. She doesn't really, but in the context of like connectivity, then kind of, yeah, like we're all coming from one source type thing. So it's like we all are kind of the same, you know. But nonetheless, I was like, when you said that, I was like, oh shit, like I am seeing pyramids too. Like I was definitely seeing pyramids too. And then I started being like, yep, this makes total sense. Like now all of a sudden I understand one of the great wonders of the world that people have not been able to prove yet, of like why they built these pyramids. I'm like, it makes total sense to me now. Like they're worshiping this idea that they see when they're tapped into this plane of existence, I guess.
Because, I mean, you can look into any of those major Central and South American cultures for sure, and even some of the ones in North America, you know, in like let's call it the 10th century onwards until Spanish arrival. That 400-year period, you had shamans who would take psychedelic drugs and they would sacrifice people on these giant shaped buildings that looked like what I saw. And it wasn't the worker class that was wanting to sacrifice people up on top of these giant pyramids. It was the ruling class, and the ruling class was kind of ruled by shamans too. So if you look back at those cultures, and this happens in other cultures too, like Egypt, Druids, things like that, where it's like the shaman, the medicine man, the religious practitioner has a lot of power and say in what goes on. And those were the guys taking psychedelics in Central and South America in that period.
Yeah. I would argue that it happens today, though, still, too. Like, okay, when I was tripping, I kept thinking about Steve Jobs for some reason. And I was just like, man, you know, because, like, Steve Jobs, like, he's a great entrepreneur, right? And like, understanding what humans would want and need and buy and all this stuff, right? And, like, he also spent time in India, and people have known, like, he was experimental in psychedelics and things like that, you know, and everything that was so simple was also profound while you're on tripping, you know, and like you said, the cool air on my legs, ooh, but when you're tripping, it's like, nah, for real, like this is, whoa. And then you look at a company like Apple, so simple, yet so profound, right? You know, it's like these are things that I feel like he got through his experiences in seeking enlightenment and experimentation and different, probably psychedelics, I would assume, you know. And I just couldn't help but think of, like, you said one thing when we were tripping. You were like, man, I want to be able to explain what I'm experiencing. Like, how will I be able to tell people what I've seen? And I thought the same thing. I'm like, yo, I'll never be able to explain this again. And I couldn't help but think of all the things that I see that tie-dye. Tie-dye is a pattern that is sold and distributed all around the world in hippie culture and things. I kept saying, this is a vibe. That's a vibe. It's a cool vibe. And I could get shirts on shirts that say vibes, you know, the cool vibes, you know. And it was this idea that, like, they are trying to sell you back this simple idea of, like, an apple, you know. And I'm not calling Steve Jobs, like, sacrificing humans or anything like that. But in a way, it was weird to me. Here's an example to sum it up. They bottle water and they sell it to you. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Water's free. It comes from the ground. Like, you can get that shit. It's abundant. But they bottle it up and they sell it to you. And in a way, they sacrifice you. You know, they sacrifice your ability to get water for free so that they can market it, you know, so that they can have some type of...
It's a control aspect, too.
It is kind of. And so my point was, like, I did think, like, to me, I was like, you know what? As I'm having this perception, we talked to, there's so many people out there who don't understand any of these concepts, who've never peeked on the other side of this. And so you have this secret knowledge, and you could use that knowledge to oppress people if you wanted to. You could use it to free them, too, but you could also use it to oppress them. You know, it's like I came to all these different realizations that I was like, dang, man, like, you could just use this. You know, like I said, I could bottle this water and sell it to you, make you think you need it like this, even though it's not like that. You know, so I don't know. You know, I don't know.
Yeah.
Modern sacrifices through capitalism.
Yeah. Yeah. We hit on a lot of topics. One of the ones I want to bring it to again, is this idea of, like, things that actually, like, it just kind of, like, makes sense. Like, it just works.
Just makes
you
sense.
know, like, we kind of got stuck in that loop where we were going back and forth how it makes sense or whatever. But in reality, you think it makes sense, but it's the question and answer. That's where, like, I would say the most intrusive thing that happened to me on mushrooms was the inability to stop asking questions too. Like, I was like, I'd ask a question and then I would think I had the answer. But then I would just ask myself another question, and I would go on.
He kept going, right?
On and on.
He was like, because if I'm you and you're me, then we're the same, right?
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 Right? And
Or
like,
something would hit me, and I'd go, wow,
Yeah.
I get it. No, I don't.
Right?
Right?
And it was like we did for a smooth, I don't know, you have no time perception.
It was a while.
But for a while, we just kept walking around the apartment just being like, right?
Right?
It's like that, isn't it?
Like,
Or
isn't it?
And it was like, it was crazy, man. It was so funny. Our logo, the tie-dye logo kept hitting me. It's just like the questioning, you know, it's like, damn, that's all you have as like a human is all you have is your ability to ask questions. And you can come up with answers, sure, but you never get, there's no answer book in life though. So you never get to check your answers and be like, do I know what, like, is this true? Is this what I'm talking about? All you can do is be like, right?
Yeah, there was this whole point of
Maybe.
like, hasn't it always been true? I came up with this idea while I was tripping. I was like, wait, we have a law of physics that says that an object in motion wants to stay in motion. We knew that. We could see it everywhere around us all the time, that something that's going forward is going to keep going forward until it's acted upon by an outside force. It just felt like that was common natural knowledge.
It's just an observation. No,
but we had to put it in the science and we had to math it out.
I mean, you actually wouldn't be able to observe that anywhere because there's always resistance in the realm that we experience things in. So, like, you could only come to that conclusion through math.
I would disagree, and I would say that...
so where do you find things to roll stuff without resistance?
Well, we know that there's the resistance. We know that even on a level playing field, you have air, you have all these
Right,
other
we
things.
know that now, but not when Newton came up with that law. That was the whole point.
So Newton invented the idea that an object in motion stays in motion. We couldn't just see that in the world. Like, if you rolled a rock down a hill, it would just keep rolling until it either started going uphill or met some sort of resistance.
No, but you're also discounting the fact that people were observing lots of different phenomena that they couldn't explain at the time that we're now, with our explanations being like, wasn't that always true? But it wasn't always true because, again, like, we experience the earth is flat. It's flat as shit when you're standing on it. Even when you're on top of a big hill, the top of the hill seems flat because you're standing on it. But when you look out from space, it's apparently round. So the things that we experience aren't correct. because we're not experiencing everything. And I think that this is where like the whole like difference of like objectionable truth versus everybody's perception comes in. It's like there's a room, like I feel like everything's true if you're experiencing it. Like your experience is as true as true could be for you. Like there is no more truth than what you are experiencing
For you.
That's what I'm saying. Like, but that's the only way you experience. There is no experiencing another person's singular experience or a collective experience, as much as we'd like to feel like we're having one of those things. Like, I don't really think that you are. Like, I think, well, I don't know. That's hard to say. But anyways, I think that really what it comes down to is whether or not and I think that this is where it comes into whether you can find out what's true is what your results are. Like, if you're getting the results that you're seeking, then that's true. Like, then it's working and it's correct. If it's not getting you the results that you're looking for, then it's incorrect and you need to change your course.
And what you're saying is the scientific method will prove things that naturally occur, right? Like that are laws.
It will explain things that in a way that we can use them. It will not prove anything.
Okay,
it will explain things in ways that we can then use them to do what we want.
My thesis is these things have always existed and always been true. And that by even trying to discover or prove it, you are proving to yourself something you know. Like he set out to prove that an object in motion stays in motion. Why did he set out to prove that?
Right. No, it's like when I say the law of, like when people talk about the law of gravity, it's not the law of gravity that creates gravity. Right? It's like gravity exists and we developed a law to explain its existence.
To explain it to ourselves.
Yeah.
So this is
why this works or how it works.
And that was kind of the feeling I had when I was on mushrooms. Not that like he didn't do a great thing that proved that this thing is true, and it is that we already knew. Like it is the universal truth of physics that we could observe and see, that he proved to us, like, yes, you're right. An object in motion stays in motion.
He just found a way to communicate it, and that was like huge for me too, which was just like things are a certain way, and just because you communicate them or found some language to define them or whatever, because we kept talking about this with math too, and like, is math like, whatever, it's just a communication device essentially of in a way to communicate the ideas that are happening, but it's like not like inherent. I don't know. It's really.
It's like if you look at the pyramid, right?
Psychedelics are deep, dude.
The pyramid has to be built perfectly for all that last capstone to fit perfectly. If it's built from the ground up, assuming you have to. That's the way you build things. So you can prove to me that all the sides are equal to make it. You know what I mean? Or like prove like the measurements and everything like that. But it's like we know it. We can see it, right? We can see that it all fits perfectly. We can like. Visually, you can see a straight line and be like, that line is straight. But then I could like prove to you it's not straight.
Yeah, true.
Like it's like perception too.
Yeah,
It's kind of part of this whole thing.
No, it's huge. Like, and I think that's the whole thing about psychedelics is really when you look at what they're doing, they're playing with your perception. They change your perception of the world. Whatever, like that chemical psilocybin, I don't know what it does, but like right now, everything that you're experiencing in the room is just light. It's all just light. But your brain puts it together to make this thing. But when you're on psilocybin, all of a sudden it breaks those lights into it's each RGB. So everything is colorful and tie-dye and has all these like tracers.
It's true. The hologram world, I call it.
Right. Yeah. You know what I mean? And it's just changing your perception because it takes you said it before. It opens your perception to perceive all these little things that you ignore every day. Like every day your brain just slaps those colors together and presents to you your visual representation. But when you're on mushrooms, all of a sudden it takes you deeper, so you do see each individual RGB and how it's working together to be like what you're perceiving. You said something that I wanted to comment on, which because it was also a revelation I had. It was just super I would not encourage you to do it by yourself. Like you said, I would not just like after this podcast run out and just monster 5 grams of mushrooms or something. Right? Maybe that's just not a good idea, because there was that part where we were really afraid that I might have fucked up or put myself in a hospital or ended up in psychosis. And you're right. The only thing that kept me, I was like, you know what? At least I'm going out with my best friend. Like that's cool. Like,
I felt very grounded.
We're in this together, and that was a great thing. So doing it with other shamanistic type people or people who have a strong mental capacity, is what I would say you have too. So that was a really grounding energy. But so I would not recommend it. But it is an experience like under controlled circumstances and things that, man, it can you have so many revelations. One of the things I had was the results. Like you said, I looked at my life in that, and I said, you know what? I don't know if the lines are straight, if the law of gravity, I don't know the world, and I have none of this stuff figured out, but I got me figured out. Like, I look at my life and I'm like,
you kept saying that I'm chilling,
bro. Like, that was one of my things, was I was just like, when I look at, like, I'm happy, I'm healthy, I'm getting better every day, and I have no reason, I have no proof to say that what I'm doing is not working. You know, it's not the way that I should be living my life, because it fucking works. Like, I'm happy, you know, I'm at this place where I'm like, I don't need money, I don't need fame, I don't need materials or any of this stuff to experience joy. And I think that that's mostly what we do in this world. Everything we do is why you go to a theme park. You know, why do you go to a museum? You're trying to experience some type of, you know, release of this, like, feel good chemical, right? And I'm like releasing that all the time. So it was cool to be in that place where it was like, yeah, like you said, I was able to measure my results and look at my life and where I've been and where I'm at and where I'm going and be like, I'm chilling, you know, like I'm chilling. Like, this is all good for me. Like, I'm doing my thing.
I'd love to hear you guys' thoughts on the medicinal usage of mushrooms.
Yeah. It's a lot of people out there starting to push for this. And I think because of the revelations that we were just talking about.
Because you spoke earlier about the recreational usage. And up until this trip, I would say all the times I've taken mushrooms were recreational.
Me too.
And this one, half recreational, but also half enlightenment, or whatever you want to call it, or deeper understanding, or letting go, you know, whatever you want to call it. Like, this one had some very positive mental and physical growth changes that I felt, where I was like, damn, I feel like I plowed a new neural pathway to get me on a better, you know,
it's true.
angle.
It's true. I know, me personally, in this space, I'm a spirit, mind, and body development, you know, coach. So this is my, like, realm or my area. And I hear a lot of people talking about psychedelics, and they're like, yo, this is the way to enlightenment and all this stuff. Like, you should take these. And I was always like, yes, I do think that they will get you there. Like, I think that a part of the reason that I've been able to get there in my life is not just that drug, but drugs in general, because they break you out of the matrix, you know, or out of your always constructed perception of reality, and they put you in this other perception that makes you have to question all your perceptions. You have to be like, whoa, like, what the fuck? Like, is this the reality or is that the reality? And then what is all this, you know? And so it's cool. It's like a shortcut, but I don't like the idea of people acting like you have to have them to get there. You know, like, I don't think that that's true, like, at all. Like, I think that you could do it. It's kind of like, you want to look good. You could do plastic surgery, fine, and you'll look good. Or you could just get your ass in the gym and do the work and stay in a caloric deficit and, you know, whatever, build muscle, and then still tone your way and shape your way to it. So it's like, yes, I think it's like that shortcut. It's that easier way to do that. And I think it does have medicinal uses for people. Like, I could definitely say I wish that my parents would try, like, a psychedelic trip. You know, I think that would be revolutionary to them and helping them break down some of their barriers and walls, you know. But at the same time, I don't know, because they're also more likely to freak the fuck out too, and then deem that just a very negative experience. So it's like, I don't know about that medicinal shit.
I think
it's going to take some science and some studying for me.
I agree. And possibly guided practices or
right,
something like that.
Right.
Yeah.
It's kind of like surgery. Like, you know, surgery will save your life, but you probably shouldn't do it on yourself. You know, you should probably go to a doctor who's, like, trained in the use of that type of medicine. Like, it's like a morphine, right? Like, you know, they don't just let you take that shit home. They'll give it to you under controlled circumstances, I think, is where
you could get pilled morphine. They'll just prescribe it to you.
Oh yeah, word, yeah. So
yeah, I mean, I don't know if they're, like, prescribing IV morphine for people. I'm sure you could get it if you had, like, a dope doctor.
Sure, you could get it.
Yeah.
Well, you could give yourself anesthesia to put yourself out,
right.
but most people don't do
But
that.
you
You
probably
have, like, a
shouldn't do
guided
it.
professional put them out and wake them back up. Yeah, an anesthesiologist.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the whole job. Yeah,
everything, yeah.
Comes with, like, training, certification. Yeah, I definitely, like, more so recently, like, I'm not thinking, like, I don't think of, like, chemicals as medicine anymore. Like, I think of, like, medicine as, like you said, like a surgeon. Like, if you got shot and he's gonna, like, put your guts back together, like, that's medicine. Like, you know, like, hospital shit. I don't know, like something like that, or if like they're gonna go in and put in like a defibrillator for your heart or some shit, like that's medicine. But like chemicals, I'm just like, that's just you, like you came up with a synthesized version of what's already going on in your body. And so it's like, I feel like if your body was working, you wouldn't need the chemicals. It's just like what Hippocrates said, which was, let food be thy medicine and medicine be thy food. Like if you take care of yourself, like that's medicine to me now. But I think that people react to different things differently. And so I think that you can use psychedelics to get, like, it's another tool in your tool belt. Like animal meat is a tool in my tool belt that I use. Some people don't use that tool. They don't like that tool for whatever reason. That's cool. They don't have to use that tool. Other people prefer, you know, like the leafy green tool. Some people prefer the meditation tool for enlightenment.
Sometimes you need an EpiPen to save your life.
Yeah, so you know, so it's like I get the, like, I just think that some people can get benefits from psilocybin for sure. And what those people, and I think that it's dumb to try to categorize it as, because when you talk about the medicinal uses, at first I was like, okay, well, I know that they're using it for like seizures. I can't exactly remember what specifically it was that a lot of the new medical trials that they're doing it with are for.
PTSD, I believe.
PTSD, yeah, stuff like that. So it's like, I know that they've been having a lot of success getting people to quit smoking using psilocybin.
Yeah.
So
Huge.
I think that people can use it for a variety of different things, as well as just recreation. You know, like you could just have a good evening tripping with your friend in your apartment.
Well,
and like that's an awesome.
You can use alcohol to clean a wound.
Yeah.
Or you
could use it to
Get
get
fucked.
loopy. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think that it just depends on what you're trying to do with it. And I think that that's why people always talk about with psychedelics, like intention is a big part of it too, because
It's true.
you're going to bring something into it. And you're also bringing, like, you're making a concoction of, like, everything that you are as a person, like your health status and your mental status, and then you're adding this extra thing to make this new thing that you'll experience for a while, and then that'll wear off, but you have to be cognizant of what you're bringing into that equation.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you're 100%. I just looked it up, and they were saying that it's mostly, like we talked about, psychological disease. So depression, smoking cessation, and other addictions, cancer-related psychological distress, and that's pretty much it. So it doesn't beat cancer, but your thought process about cancer.
Make you
and all
feel
that
better
stuff
about it.
Yeah. Now, I had this experience while I was tripping, too. It's like, I'm looking at all these Reese's and all this sugar on the table. Like, it was weird. I had this idea that it's all placebo. Like, everything is placebo, you know, like Advil. You know, I kept thinking, I was like, yeah, that makes sense. You know, they package up this little pill and they say, like, this will solve your headache. But I don't really know why, you know, and it's like weird. It's like that I could pound sugar. Like, I pound it, but then I'm still like this, you know? And then, like, somebody else might not. I don't know. It was weird. But in the sense when they were saying, like, smoking cessation and addictions, you know, I kept thinking of it like that with this, like, I'm like, oh, man, I suck these cigarettes down or I suck this sugar down. Like, it's doing something for me. But it just broke my perception that has some type of inherent, like, I'm giving it power. Like, I'm like sometimes I was just like, dude, like, I smoke weed so much that I don't even know if I'm high anymore. It's like, now it's just like, it broke that perception of that. You know, it's like, you might have this idea that you're like, I need this. Like, I need these pills to be better. Like you said, I need this smoking substance because it's doing X, Y, Z. But when you get on the mushrooms, all of a sudden it's like, that's just not true. Like, you're making all, like, it has this way of melting away all these false ideas that you have about things. And so then I was like, yo,
It's got some truth serum in it.
it does have a little bit of that
truth
in there.
serum in it.
It has a little bit of that in it. I would love to hear some of y'all's like, what do you guys think about the different psychedelics and kind of where they all play together? I think you're the only one you never tried DMT.
I have not tried DMT,
I have
but
never done DMT.
I could talk
so
about acid.
Yeah, but I've done acid and I've done mushrooms.
Those are the only two. Or, well, with DMT, those are the only three I've ever done.
Yeah. Because I've heard
But
some
there's
other
a lot.
things. Yeah, it's like
There's a lot.
ayahuasca, like, you know, like doing that, which is like a whole smoking peyote, essentially, if you don't know what ayahuasca is. And
Ayahuasca is a liquid.
Yeah, but there's a lot. We making the point that a lot of psychedelics exist and they have
Right.
different effects.
Yeah.
Like I would agree to that because as someone who's never done DMT, hearing you explain how short that trip is, like that sounds profound. But it doesn't seem like particular. Like right now, I don't feel any particular urge to ever want to do that, because one of my favorite things about these journeys is like that length of time, like that and like you said, the waves, and then like I remember when I was finally at the point where I was like blinking and the Aztec patterns weren't like constantly in my vision, and I was able to talk like a human, and man, I felt great.
Oh my God.
I felt so good. I felt like I fucking understood. I felt like all the things that I was trying to keep myself from constantly babbling about, I was able to internalize and, use for my own
I
good.
kept telling myself, and so funny, I was scared to get here. I kept telling myself that. I was like, man, you were so afraid of getting here. Like, it was like the journey down was terrifying. But then I got to this place, and the way back up was just like...
Much better, yeah.
Just chilling. I felt so good, and I kept laughing about. I was like, "Yeah, you were just scared to get here. It's so weird." Like it was like Space Jam, where he's like getting yanked in the Looney Tune world, and it's like, where am I going? And then you end up in this cool place, and you're like, "Whoa, this is cool. I'm in a cartoon world now," And so yeah, it's definitely I like.
I would say it was much more mellow than acid.
Yeah, it is. It is. I've always
acid,
noticed.
I felt much more ramped up to where, like you described the next day, how you kind of feel like shit. Like I every time I've done acid, the next day has been like, ugh.
A recovery.
It's like my body hurts.
Yeah.
Like everything hurts because I was so, taken. But with mushrooms, it was much more like I was in a lazy river. And I just came back to the start and was able to get off.
Dude, I woke up at 8:30 to go to the DMV and like make my DMV appointment at 9. Like I wasn't hungover or anything like you said or nothing, but yeah, I've noticed acid to be more chemically. I mean, it is a chemical. It's like I'm trying to think of an example outside of psychedelics, or maybe kind of like the difference between like weed and opiate or something. It's like mushrooms is very much more earthy and more weed type kind of feeling and vibration, whereas acid is a lot more of a like a chemically type experience. I found acid to be far more intense too. Like I said, it seemed like it took me a lot of mushrooms to get to that place, whereas I've taken like one tab of acid before and been like
really good acid will just
zoomed.
send you to the moon.
The visuals, yeah. I saw, and I didn't think about this till now, but like, seeing the visuals on acid of the organic eye creep or whatever you want to call it, those cool fractal patterns that you seem to be able to control with your mind almost. Like that on acid was like, bang, you're in there, and it was like within like an hour, I was like, oh my God, like I was really into the patterns everywhere. Somehow I got the exact same thing with mushrooms, and they're two entirely different substances. So it's a little strange that like I saw all these things on acid and I saw all these things on mushrooms. Like, why am I seeing the same geometric hologram rainbow fractal patterns every time I take some sort of psychedelic trip? Because they're not the same substance. They don't do the same thing or release the same chemical.
Well,
I think that they attach to the same receptors in your
Right.
brain.
yeah. Because that's one thing that Mac was hitting on earlier about medicine that was a profound realization for me, which was just like, they don't do, like, when you take Molly, let's just use like Molly, for instance, right? It's not adding serotonin and dopamine and shit to your brain. That's not what it's doing. It's opening your brain's ability to release those chemicals that are already in your brain, So it's like same thing too. I think the mushrooms, the psilocybin and the LSD, they both work on those same like, release this chemical in your brain, and then that chemical in your brain makes you.
I wonder what else would make me see the Aztec pyramids.
DMT? No? Pyramids? Aztec-y type?
Well-
what I call sacred geometry. I've heard described as sacred geometry.
Yeah, I'd say that before I had ever done any psychedelics, and shortly after, like I remember hearing everybody say the term visuals, like you'll have a lot of like hallucinations and visuals and stuff, and I was like,
See
that
God.
seems
I've
kind of
heard
weird. And then I did them, and I was like, I mean, I definitely like, I felt like stuff that normally seemed solid seemed kind of like wavy, like it was like moving a little bit, or like you said, like the colors will be like really vibrant or anything, but I never really felt like I was getting anything like
Patterns?
I mean, patterns, I guess. Like, if I was tripping right now, the weird stucco pattern on the wall, like I would, it wouldn't like stand out, but it would just seem like I could see movement in it or whatever. So like that was really always like, and I never really did big dosages of mushrooms or acid. Like I always kind of just kept it chill. Like I said, I was just trying to use it for recreation. But when I did DMT, it was like different. Like that happened, but everything's so condensed in DMT. Like you still kind of have like this ramping up and this like ramping down, but it all just happens so quickly. And so it's like, if you have experience with longer trips, then it just seems like, whoa, like that was one of the most novel experiences of the whole thing, was just like how quickly the whole thing went down. But then that was like the only time that I've ever actually had like legit hallucinations where like I wasn't seeing what was actually happening around me.
Yeah.
Like on acid and shrooms, I would see what was happening around me in like a goofy
different
way.
way.
Like I was in like a funhouse mirror and there was like fog
True.
or something like that. Like, you know, just like foggy, hazy.
But you're not
But
gonna
like
see something that's
when I'm in, like when I hit the DMT shit, like I remember first thing that happened was everything got really bright and glowy. And like all the colors was like, it's like somebody turned up the brightness and the saturation in my view HUD. They were just like, and I was like, whoa. And I remember there's like this really bright red tablecloth hanging off this table in the corner or whatever. And then I remember I started to just feel like, you know, like the head swirly. So I was like dizzy and I like leaned over to lean on my knees. And then I sat up, but like only my consciousness sat up. Like I saw myself still leaning down. And then I saw myself fall out of the chair, even though I was still, there was like two of me. There was the me I could see of myself. Like, you know, like if you were first person, look down at yourself in a chair. But then there was also the me that was laying on the ground that I was looking at. And I was like, is that me? And this is my consciousness? Like, that's how it felt. Like, it felt like my consciousness was here and that I had fallen out of the chair. And then when I looked up from myself, I was in all white. Like, I wasn't in the garage with my homies anymore. Like, I was in this endless space.
like the Matrix, like when they
Like in the Matrix, yeah. And like there was just nothing. But like there was nothing physical, but on top of this 3D space that I was in, I could see in my field of vision color. Like, it's hard to explain. Like if you imagine like a Celtic cross where it has like a convex thing and then it had another one in this going perpendicular to it, and there were blocks of colors, like all different colors, and the top, like the middle one was going up and down and it was like rolling, and then the side one was going left to right. And when they met in the middle, the block in the middle had a circle, and then it had numbers inside the circle, and the circle, like inside, the two colors would blend, and then there would just be like a random number. And I remember that was just going like really, really fast, and that happened for about 5 seconds, and then I snapped out of it, and I was back into the glowy room, and then everything just went back to normal.
Wow.
And I remember like that was the only time that I'd ever had like a full blown like I'm seeing shit.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm seeing shit that's not happening.
You unlocked a good mushroom memory for me. One of the things that is probably going to hit you like a ton of bricks, but I can remember being like, yo, my body is my anchor to reality. But when I close my eyes, I can go anywhere and I can be anything. And I was like blown away by that. By one simple act, I can bloop morph into any other person's perspective. Like, because your imagination's endless, you know?
Yeah.
And who's to say that like the imagination isn't endless because we're all touching and you can feel the energy of everything,
true.
you know? So like, could I close my eyes and try to see things from Mac's perspective? I feel like I can
'Cause
until
I
I
did
open
that.
my eyes,
Yeah.
and then I'm grounded back into my reality of my physical being.
True.
So I really did start to think of that in a greater way that I've never thought of before, and think about the idea of my eyes closing and my imagination, like in the greater aspect of like even in my personal life of storytelling, because I'm a storyteller. I love telling stories. That's like my whole thing. It's my A plan is to tell my stories to the world and have some way to be reciprocated back a way of living. And if I close my eyes, I can go to any one of them, you know, while my eyes are open and I'm here and I'm physically on Earth and I'm stuck in this reality. I can't be in a spaceship in the asteroid belt. But the minute I go, like this, oh my goodness, bro, right there. I could be right there. And who's to say I'm not? You know what I mean?
See that's I think you just explained meditation, right? Like that's why I think why we meditate with our eyes closed is because it helps you to detach away from your physical perception of reality, you know, and like that's why you sit with your eyes closed and do all these breathing exercises. And that's also why I don't think you need the mushrooms, you know. It's like if you're willing to do like the breath work and stuff, like it'll get you to the same place. I've been to that same place that you're explaining when we were on mushrooms, but then also through meditation too, you know. One of the things that I was experiencing that didn't hit a core memory for me, but it did unlock something else, which was like I was burning up, dog. Like, it was so funny. Even when you were talking about it earlier, he was like, yeah, we were like looking at we were sitting on his kitchen floor. We were sitting inside. I was trying to sit in the refrigerator. Like, I remember, like, I had my head and everything, like, in the fridge. And I kept thinking to myself, I'm like, it's so wild how much your reality is just based completely on your perception. I was like, is the room hotter? Am I experiencing it hotter now?
Your body was probably hotter.
It would probably was. I started thinking that too. I was like, I'm probably raising my internal temperature through this, substance. Like, that'll happen to you with a lot of different drugs and stuff. So, but it's still crazy though, because I'm in control of my own temperature, and then everything made sense. I'm like, this is why you can Wim Hof. This is why you can sit in an ice bath and stuff, because the temperature of the thing does not have to control your perception of the temperature, right? Like, I've been in ice baths and felt warm, and like, I've been in cold places like there. Like, the room was fine until I ate the mushrooms. All of a sudden, I was like burning up. And again, this was leading to my idea of like, I'm overdosing and shit. I'm like, oh my God, I'm gonna fucking, pass out and all this stuff. And I was just like, just put your head in the fridge.
I'm gonna sweat my blood out.
Yeah, like, just put your head in the fridge, bro. You're gonna be all right, bro. Like, chill.
There's a couple times I went out.
Just go put your head in the fridge.
You're gonna be all right, man.
There's a couple times I went to that outside porch and
Yeah.
felt that cool, that real air.
Yeah.
And my goodness, did it feel good.
It's
such a great perception alterer,
Yeah.
like doing the mushrooms.
Yeah,
Like,
it
it's why I want to experiment with microdosing a little bit.
Yeah.
Because I felt such an appreciation that I don't normally get every day. It's
Yeah.
it's probably there, I'm sure. It's there in my brain every day, but I don't acknowledge it or think about it. But when I was tripping, I walked out there and was like, thank you,
Yep.
everyone and everything.
Everything. Yep.
For just allowing me to breathe this cool, fresh air in
100%.
freedom. No one's messing with me. No one's knocking on my door.
Yeah.
Like,
That was me too. I just kept thinking like, damn, man, oxygen just jumping in and out of my body every single day, all day. And I don't have to ask for it. I don't have to like beg to breathe. It just happens. And like, same thing if I wanted to watch. It really got to this like, damn, I'm really in like a Garden of Eden type situation, like I the highest level of consciousness on this planet, and all of this stuff here, I can manipulate it, and you said use it or not use it or whatever, but I'm just living in this magical place where you can do anything you want to. And it's weird because they don't want you to know that, like they want you to think it's like, and by they, I don't, the man or whoever you think is out here pulling the
whoever
strings.
your oppressor is.
Your Illuminati or whoever it is, name them. But they do that. They're like, you got to go to job and you got to make money and, all these things to like live. And this is how it has to work. And then I realized I was just like, dang, man, nah, it's not really like that. You're just born here and you're just out here like living it. It was a really cool experience for me.
Let me see if I can try to link the idea that you just said to something that I thought of but didn't say earlier, just because it really wasn't on point. Earlier you were talking about how somebody, like they'll take the water and they'll sell it to you in this bottle, like and it was almost like you were speaking as if like they were kind of like tricking you, like haha, like I took this thing that everybody can get and I'm selling it to you for like your hard-earned money. And I think that it's kind of interesting that you described the experience that you're having, or at least the one that you are tapping into when you're on mushrooms, as being like this Garden of Eden where like everything is just like so abundant and right at your fingertips. And I'd say that those two things are actually linked together. Like, how awesome is it that you could just go to the store and get a bottle of water, or go to your fridge or turn on the tap or whatever. And like, I've always looked at it as being like, and that's one thing that psychedelics, especially recently, has really given me, which is like, I normally tend to just use them in a sense of like getting me to appreciate some of the small things that I may have been taking for granted. Like the fact that I just have water like on hand all the goddamn time. And like, I would like imagine if there wasn't somebody there to sell you the water for money that you can get doing something that you love doing and providing an awesome service to people and giving value to them. And instead you had to like fight the biggest guy around for access to the spring. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like I much prefer the situation we happen to be in now, given all the negatives that it does come with, like plastic pollution and shit like that. Like, I like that I can do clothing and graphic design, make some money, and then give that money to a guy who's like, look, I got this spring. I take care of the spring. You can tell because it's like tasty water that doesn't make you sick. And then I can just give him the money that I get for doing my thing for taking care of the water.
I pictured the caveman walking amongst the other cavemen. Water skin here. Get your water skin.
I sell you a bladder to keep your water in.
Because when one of the mushroom realizations I had was like, I'm in a cave. And I've brought the spring to
into
me.
your house. Yeah.
Like I live in a cave that has its own underground system.
It's
like not
true.
only that, I can create condensed cold air with the click of my fingers. And so I was like, damn, we've come a long way just to be where we have always been. You know, like we're these
we always do the
social,
same things.
These social creatures. We like our own little space. We like to have our wash. We like to have our food. We like to have our flat surface. Like, and I was like, damn, you know, it's been what 20,000 years of modern humans, something like that.
You literally talked about like you said, you brought up cave paintings. And I remember I was like, yeah, it's them trying to explain what they've seen. You know, like you said, like, how do I relay this trip to my fellow man? You know, like,
my cave
gotten
paintings.
all this like value out of like the things I learned. And I have to find some way to pass this along to other people. And, you know, so it's just like you see that all through time of like why we write books, why we create cave paintings, why we created language, like all these things, you know, it was so valuable, you know, to get to your point about that. I love that. No, and I had that. I was like, man, I'm so grateful that this is that and blah, blah, blah. But I went in with a pre-notion, right? It's kind of like I was tempered to have this certain revelation in this trip, which was I was studying this guy. I'm studying sales, like, you know, I do. I am a businessman. Like, it's not get twisted. So, you know, I'm studying commerce and all this stuff. And the thing that fucked me up was I was listening to this case study where they were talking about somebody who wanted to sell more vacuum, like carpet cleaning services. Right. And so he goes, you know, how do most people try and I think I talked about this on the podcast recently too, but how do most people sale? Like, oh, you get 3 rooms for the low price of $49.99, all this stuff. And that's how most people go about selling. But he's like, but that's not really what you need to do. What you need to do is you have to manufacture the need. You know, it's like it would be better if you made it the idea of instead of making it cheaper, make the idea of carpet cleaning more valuable to
Essential.
you. Right, exactly. And so he said what you do is they funded this study to that proved that there was all these microbacteria and stuff that live in your carpet all the time, and they get trapped in your carpet, and you'll have more disease and more this and that without having these clean carpets. And so now, like you said, now it's, well, damn, I don't want to get sick. Like, I didn't realize my dirty carpet, because if it's just like you want your carpet to look nicer, looks fine.
Yeah, it's
but
fine.
you don't want to get sick though. You know, and so now you're getting your carpet clean. Fine, whatever. He sells more carpet cleaning. But then that sucks. You know, that's the part that I don't like but now I'm sitting here walking around. I kept laying down on the carpet, you know, and like we're tripping. And I'm just like, man, I had this thought of like, I probably shouldn't lay here because, you know, I'm inhaling all these microbacteria because this is a high traveling area within the apartment. So people are walking through here with their shoes.
You
and
have
all
no
this stuff.
knowledge of the last time it was clean.
You know, and all that stuff. And so I'm sitting here thinking this. But then I'm also like, but I mean, you know, like I came from the dirt. Like we used to sleep in the dirt, like outside and feces and shit and everything. Like I'm sure there are, but I'm
covered in cloth.
You know what I mean? Like everything around me is carrying germs all the time. And that's the thing I don't like is like you do have this profound sense of oneness when you're having these mushroom trips or when you're in this state. But then you could also see that if I separate you from that oneness, though, like if I make you believe that you're not one, that those microbacteria and you are different and that you should not commingle and stuff. Now I can manipulate you. Now I can sell you things. I can cause war. If I make you think that Russia and Ukraine are different things, you know, well then now we can bicker and we can fight and I can own this piece of land and this and that when none of us own anything.
I can make you think that the tap water that you're already paying for that comes out of your faucet
somehow less than. You know?
It's like or shouldn't be consumed. It's like I better go buy the bottled water.
Exactly.
Because I don't want to drink the water that comes, you know, that I'm already paying for that comes out of my faucet.
And I get that it sells more water, but you're also lying to people and you're creating false psychoses in people's brain. And now we're worried about all types of shit that really, dude, even as we were studying for another episode that we're going to do soon about things, I heard this statistic that I'm going to look it up, but 90-something% of, like, when you look at studies, scientific studies, they're often funded by the people who want a certain result, right?
Yeah,
and
that's
almost overwhelmingly, they get that result.
Of course.
Almost every time. I think it was like 70 or 80%. The study is favorable to the person funding the study. And it's like, you know, what is science out here? Like,
money
what
and
is
politics.
it?
It's the same thing, dog.
You know, and that to me is fuck shit. You know, that's not truth. Like you said, if you want to just, I'm offering you clean, tasty water or whatever, and you can get it if you want it, or don't if you don't, whatever. Like, but the idea that I'm gonna bend your fabric of reality so that you would buy more of my water is like, there's something manipulative and evil about that to me. You know, it's like fucked up, you know, in some way.
I started having this thought about, you know, what if we took poison? What if the visuals we have are like our brain being like, stop, stop, whatever you're doing, this is a bad idea.
You mean alcohol?
Well, because like I started thinking about the greater picture and how it could tie together. Like, if I'm seeing the same thing that the Aztecs and the Mayans did, like, why did they see the same things as me? And why did they feel the need to sacrifice humans to appease it? So it just made me think, like, you know, sometimes we eat something from the ground that is an antioxidant or does these other positive effects for us. And then sometimes we see crazy geometric patterns. And it's just like, maybe it's up to the individual whether or not those crazy geometric patterns can corrupt you, or you can have like an appreciation. But I mean, I would love to know, and I don't think we ever will, what that connection to the past is.
Yeah. I felt it. Probably the biggest revelation I had was like, you only got right now. You know, I was like, dang, your whole life, everything, time and space, not just your life, but all lives are nothing but memories and dreams, you know, and you really only have right now. And everything else, like you said, like what happened before you got here, what happened before you were born, you'll never know. And what's going to happen after you leave, you'll never know. Like, it's all that's a mystery. What I ate for breakfast on February 12th at 11 p.m. or whatever, you know, like what were you doing on February 12th at 3 p.m.? You have no fucking clue. You have no, only thing you know is that you were around, but you don't know. You might have been able to be like, you know, I was at home probably based on my routine, but you don't really know on that specific day at this specific time what was happening. So it's like, is it real at all?
Yeah, if you
know?
forget
It's
a
like,
memory, it's gone forever.
It's gone
buddy.
forever, you know what I mean? And it really sat me down in that, you know. It's kind of, you were talking about, you know, I had the perception of Brody and watching and learning from me, and as I pass down all this information, and we're always trying to do that. Like you said, we're always trying to pass on this information because it's always running away from us. It's always fleeting. You might forget, and you know, you what did you see? What happened? You know, write that down. Like you said, I learned this thing about the sun. You know, quick, write that down and pass that along, because if you don't, it'll disappear right there with you, you know, forever.
Like you said, cave paintings. I mean, there were paintings of like dress up like a wolf and sneak up on the buffalo.
Yeah. Right.
That's good communication for the next generation. The next generation be like, damn,
I didn't know that.
if I dress up like a dead wolf, I can sneak up on these buffalo.
Right. You know, so it's like it just reminded me of how fleeting every moment is, you know, and that's why you're always trying to write books and trying to do all this stuff and communicate and share, because all of this stuff is just, you know,
And that's why you should listen to this podcast,
facts.
because it's a good use of time. It's a much better use of time than listening to other podcasts.
I will co-sign that statement.
buy
I
that.
mean, yeah.
It's my-
And who's to say that it isn't? Prove me wrong.
Yeah, I can't. Yeah, I can't. I'm sorry. I
can't.
wish I could, man, but I just can't.
This is the reason why we turned on the AC after my man spent some time in the fridge. You know, prove to me that the AC's bad for you. I can't.
Yeah.
Just like, you know, like what's wrong about this cool condensed air? Nothing. Let's turn it on.
Yeah, let's use it. Fuck it.
I don't use condensed air, but that's a different topic.
Yeah, that's another topic for another day, because boy, we talked about, we're like, dang, we've gotten to the point where we have air conditioning. You can condition your air to be
Whatever you want it to
be like that.
I would like this air conditioned to 64 degrees, please. And the little machine outside's like, got it, boss. I'll
feel
go
like
until I
that's
die.
like the least, like that's the most prevalent thing that we think about when it comes to air conditioning. But like air conditioning to me mostly means like purification, because I feel like that's the more important process that it goes through.
But
it's conditioned.
It's wild that we got that power and that ability, you know. And then like you said, it didn't come from nowhere. We wanted that shit. Over time, we were like, damn, I'm tired of being hot and sweaty out in this bitch. I wish that I could like control the temperature in my. And we invented some crazy wacky machine that'll do just that. For you.
You
That
figure
is a
out
blessing.
we had the giant machines that burn coal, and eventually we were like, man, we need to clean up this air.
Yeah, you know.
Let's
what I mean?
build
We're
some
like-
machines to clean the air.
Yeah.
Actually, that's what they said the first time when they were burning all the wood. They were like, damn, we need to clean up this air.
Yeah.
They were like, you know what? I was digging in the dirt a while back, and I found this really flammable black shit.
Let's try
You
that.
should try that.
Yeah.
They were like, that's a great idea.
But I love this because this is often our solution to climate change and all that stuff. It's like we're not saying that it's not happening. We're just saying like we'll figure it out.
We'll get some machines on it.
Once we start,
Put some
once we
machines
start
on it.
we're already starting to realize it. We're already starting to be like, maybe we should try electricity. You know, like I said, we were trying wood. Shit was all right. And we got the coal, and we're like a little better, but maybe not so. You know, and you're always like learning and adapting. You know, humans have this uncanny ability to learn and adapt, and so I think we will continue to do that as crisis, you know, reach us. When we get to that tipping point, we always find a way to be like, maybe I shouldn't do that.
I'm waiting for the full Planeteers circle to happen, where it's like, yeah, we used wood, you know, we used oil, but now it's like solar, wind, air, water. I'm just waiting for like the one where it's like, we just use the earth to get our energy. We just plug into the earth and adapt that energy.
Geothermal is what you're discussing.
Geothermal.
Yes,
I
it's
can't wait till we
geothermal
burn
energy.
the trash. Well, not burn the trash, but find a way to replenish the trash. Like, you know, like a completely, like they talk about self-sufficient. You know how you have a water fountain? And it doesn't waste water because it just keeps using the same water. You shoot it up to the top, it falls back down, and you shoot it back up to the top, falls back down. That would be great when we figure that out with energy. Because right now it's like use the energy. Now all of this is just waste. It's just trash over there. You do the same thing. I mean, I don't know if we'll ever figure it out because it's like
Oh no, we
we'll
don't
also
have
learn
to.
how to stop shitting. Then.
Yeah, we don't have to figure it out. We don't have to figure out how to do it. We have to figure out how to adapt that back into our lives. Like we were already doing that. Like the system was already doing that.
Damn.
Because you could only, like, the energy you had, you got from eating. The eating came from the ground. The nutrients in the ground to give you the food came from your shit. And there is life and energy. There's perpetual energy as we know it. Shit to the ground, nutrients into the ground, nutrients into the plants, plants into the animals, animals into the animals, animals into the shit into the ground.
It's a lot simpler than 12 million flat microchip wafers.
Per cubic inch.
That makes a lot more sense.
So yeah, I mean, like I've always felt like the future will be an amalgamation of like correcting the things that we thought we understood in the 20th and 21st century and reintroducing things that we remembered from the first century. You know what I mean? Like just getting, because I think that's just like the story of human beings. Like we just take things super, super far until it just hurts the shit out of us. And then we're like, oh, we need to tone it back.
I totally thought about this when we were talking about medicine earlier. And like you said, it was like, there's great benefits to medicine. It fixed a lot of things. Like, you know, like all of our babies were dying. We figured out medicine shit. We get to keep more babies. But then it's like, then you just start treating medicine as like the ultimate holy grail of everything.
For everything.
Like, medicine should just be used for everything.
Just put medicine in our cars.
Yeah.
Like, what?
And it's
you don't
like,
feel good? Take an Advil from your Kia.
Yeah, you know, and it was like, yo, chill. Like, there's a such thing as too much of a good thing. And you're right. I can't wait till we start synthesizing some of the ways of old that had benefits, you know, and use some of the benefits of medicine, but not just like becoming a crackhead for that shit every time we find something that's good. We're like, coal? Oil? Yes, I love this shit. You know, make everything oil. Oh.
The cave of the 22nd century. You go in and it's like, it's adapted for the quote unquote like modern caveman, but it's all like the things that you would have wanted as a caveman 20,000 years ago.
Yeah,
like
like
what Kanye West is on. Those caves.
We've used technology and industrialization to step off of our biological track, and we're just now starting to feel the repercussions from that. And so, like, once we do that, if we are sensible and we're paying attention, we'll make the right calculations and be like, oh, we got off track from, like, being in tune with, like, just being in harmony with the natural processes that were already happening that led to us being able to do all the things that we fucked ourselves up with.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like shoes. Shoes are a perfect example. Like you invent shoes because your feet get cut up and stabbed and infections and you're getting bit by shit. So you come up with shoes and you're like, this is great. I'm protected. But then you take shoes too far and you like, I've come up with like, now we're going to have pointed toe shoes. Cause like, why not?
Now
It's like
house
fancy
shoes.
Yeah. Hands, you know, like you have all these different ways of doing shoes and you don't think about what it's going to do. Like, oh, if I have these shoes for infants that are not shaped like human feet, but shaped like shoe shape, and then I take babies' malleable bones and I shove them into shoes while they're growing, they grow into shoe shapes instead of regular human foot shapes. We didn't know that until we did it for 100 years, and now we're like, yo, babies' feet aren't totally solid, and they will grow into a shape if you let it.
And they also don't need shoes.
And they also don't really need shoes.
Yeah.
Like the ultimate level of shoes was like a piece of leather that they tied to. It was a flip-flop. Like you tie a flip-flop together on your foot so that it doesn't get stabbed by rocks, and you're good to go.
Yeah. But I guarantee you cavemen were not wearing the shoes in their cave. You know what I mean? Like, you know, it's like you picked out all the rocks. It's like nice and comfortable, you know. But like,
Dusted
if you,
it
by all
down.
means, if you're going to go and you're going to, you know, take on an expedition through the wilderness, like by all means, you know, throw a shoe on here there so you can make your trek and
Make
your
your way
journey.
through the brush.
But like you said, the idea that I need to slip on a pair of moccasins at home and keep, you know, to
I need
keep
to
my feet off the
slaughter
carpet, you
a
know?
baby lamb to
Yeah.
get the proper wool that lines
Yeah.
the inside
Yeah.
of my dead cow shoe.
yeah, it's like
Yeah.
it's taking it a little far.
It
You're
is.
right.
It's-
Yeah,
Well,
it is.
some people need that. Like
Yeah.
people living in like Arctic conditions, like the
Nah,
Inuit.
But it's like you said, the point is like, do you need it though?
Right.
You know, like that's where I'm
Hey,
at with
Joe,
it.
Can we
I'm-
just take things too far?
Yeah.
I'm
just
slipping
take some-
those shoes on, and I'm not going out into the snow. I'm going into my Ford excursion
Mhm.
to go down to the Smiths and, you know, get
And
know
like
what I mean?
I'm, you know, I understand that. This is the funny thing though, is that now our modern day urban environments, and really our modern day suburban and sometimes rural environments, are just not set up for non-shoe wearing, unshotted as it's known.
They're not meant for you to walk.
Yeah, it's not even meant for you to walk, let alone without shoes. So we're gonna have to readapt our whole society to be like, oh, we fucked up our feet. Our feet are the foundation of our bodies, so then that fucked up our bodies. So that to fix our feet, we'll have to fix our shoes or whatever. But then you're like, oh shit, well, now we have to figure out something else. Like we're gonna have to carpet over all the sidewalks or something. I don't know.
Yeah, like
Somebody will come up with something.
Hover seat.
back in the 1970s.
Yeah, they'll just get rid of walking. They'll be
Yeah.
like, you know what? We'll just cut the whole thing out entirely.
Yep. Okay. Back in the 1970s, there was the public outrage when businesses first placed signs on their door saying "No shirt, no shoes, no service." This was a response by businesses to keep the long-haired hippies out of their stores and restaurants.
Wow.
There was no state or federal mandate.
That's interesting.
Because as we were talking about this, I was like, you know, not only did they not adapt it to be that way, but they discouraged it and hard. You know, they were like, no, you're gonna put them shoes on. And at first I was like, yeah, it's these shoe selling companies. They were like, yo, start making this no shoe. But it was, and, you know, it's come to find out. Brennan was so funny. He was all like, yo, I hope you enjoyed St. Patty's Day. You know, he's like, I'm sure it's some type of racist holiday. They all are. And I was just like laughing, and I was like, I mean, because, you know, a lot of times we were really into that oppression and segregation back in the day when we were creating a lot of these traditions. So it's interesting how they prevail through our society today. But yeah, that was a I knew it was some bullshit of like why we created that idea, because I think about it all the time, like, what the fuck I need a shirt on for, man? I'm on the beach. You don't give a fuck. But now I come into the store, I gotta have a shirt.
The shoe thing is fucking with me, because it's like now if you go to any of these strip malls, there's a huge percentage of them that'll just have like sharp, loose rocks as like an ornamental thing for you to walk on. Like it's not meant to be walked on, but it's across all of the sidewalk, and then you have like a way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
and
most
they're
people
like,
are gonna walk.
stay on the sidewalk.
Yeah, they're gonna tromp through this area. So instead of grass, they just put sharp rocks.
Yeah.
And it's like, damn, if you were barefoot, that shit would suck.
Yeah.
There's sharp rocks everywhere in Vegas.
No, they did that shit on purpose. Use asphalt that's like burning hot, you know, but you know, whatever. I mean, yeah, that's the way we're evolving. But I hope we synthesize. But anyways, you know, in conclusion, you know, I really enjoyed the old mushroom tip. I'm excited to do some experimentation in the microdosing arena with that too. You know, and just type, which, you know, if you guys know what microdosing is, it's just like you just take a little itty bitty bit and it just kind of like
Yeah, I was
It
gonna.
just gives you a little taste.
Like makes
like
you
a little-
kind of think about things just slightly.
I was gonna take a
little
bite with
different.
my coffee one morning.
Yeah,
Just be-
yeah. I mean, I've been on it
Like a
now
little
for a
baby
couple
carrot.
days. You know, I'm doing like a two to 3 days on. You know, like a day off type like rotation. You know, I've seen people doing this already, and they've had profound benefits that they've talked about, and I realized that most of my life is conjured up in a way to produce good feelings. You know, everything I do is designed to make me feel good, and I've heard that, you know, throwing a little microdose in there is another good way to, you know, even if it's not, some people just say like cordyceps mushrooms and all these other like what are those, like I even thought about trying this mud water stuff, you know, which is like more of like a mushroom extract
Seen
than
it
it is
advertised,
coffee. Yeah, which, you know, I might try that because coffee do be having a lot of negative side effects too, you know. So
Instead of the mushrooms, don't let them fool you.
yeah, I'm sure, right? Yeah, because we can get onto a whole nother thing.
Think about all the
them,
negative
you know,
aspects of water.
nightshades, you know.
They have to
shit like
pee all the time.
that. Oh, but yeah. So I'm excited to experiment with that, see how that works. But you know, in closing, for me, I would love people to try mushrooms.
For
low-key, or,
closing,
like-
for me, everybody get your hands up. You know what I
Hands
mean?
up.
You want
I
to be
will.
strong? Do you want to be strong? Get your hands up.
Also a good dopamine releasing activity.
Yep.
Power pose, get your hands up. That's good. Yeah.
It works. Fun conversation, guys. I appreciate you guys tuning in, and we'll see you again on the next episode.
That's right. Peace.
Just when I think you couldn't possibly be any dumber, you go and do something like